like to welcome you all again to the Buffalo History Channel. I'd like to thank you all for your continued support. We've been growing by leaps and bounds right here on YouTube, and we endeavor to do our best to bring you some of the rarest interviews from Buffalo's, not just Buffalo's African-American history, but Buffalo's history as a whole. And this is a very special interview for me, as well as for Buffalo, because I'm talking to a man who's I learned initially at the feet of this gentleman back in the summer of 1988 when I was first introduced to him. At the age of 16, I was interested in pursuing a career at the early age of 16 in the field of media, television in particular. And John Smith, whose interview you saw earlier on the Buffalo History Channel, he was the man who introduced me to this gentleman right here, Jimi Lyons, at Channel 7 back in the summer of 1988. Going to hear about his history. Also, his father has an extremely significant history in the city of Buffalo. His father is a man that every person in Buffalo radio should know. Everybody should know this man's name, Jimi Lyons Sr. He was the very first full-time African-American radio DJ, radio personality in the city of Buffalo. I'd like to welcome his son, whose feet I learned that initially back in the day, to the Buffalo History Channel. Jimmy,
hey,
welcome.
Doug. Thanks a lot, Doug. I really appreciate this opportunity to talk about my dad.
Absolutely, man. I am certainly happy to extend that opportunity to you. Let's just start from the beginning. Talk to us about your father and who he was, how he first got into radio.
Well, I think to understand Dad's contribution to radio, you really have to look at his life and what a unique personality he was. As a youth, as a child during the Depression, he used to tap dance on street corners and join talent shows, and he made actually more money than his father doing that. So he was in show business from a very early age. He went into the Army, of course, during World War II. And he had a band in the Army called the Bobby Soxers, and they were like off the charts. And then he was a very much a Renaissance man. In the 50s, he worked at Bell Aircraft, one of the few African Americans at Bell Aircraft. And then also on weekends, he would sing in nightclubs.
Really?
And
he was a singer too.
He was a singer. He was an entertainer, all around entertainer, singer, dancer. And then the amazing part of that, and at the same time, he was also on weekends doing radio. This is in the early 50s.
Mm-hmm.
He was doing radio on WXRA on, and he was the only, there was another disc jockey, Mr. George Bratton, who was also a part-timer on radio too. He was another brother who was part-timer. So Dad brought all this as a showbiz personality. He was a draftsman at Bell Aircraft. Very, 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 very smart. He could draw. He could sing, and he and my mom also had a clothing store on William Street before I was born in the 40s. It's just an amazing personality. And then of course Waffle started in the early 60s, and so he was hired on, and he became the first full-time African American. Before he was part-time, the first full-time African American. A disc jockey in Buffalo. And in the 50s, just to back up a minute, we have to really look at the culture at that time, what was going on. And there was no reflection, there was very little reflection of the African-American community in media in Buffalo or throughout the entire United States. There was no reflection of our music, of our culture, of our religions. And so what he became, he was like the portal in Buffalo for African-American culture. When the big entertainers came to town, like Sammy Davis, they would all come on his show because that was the only outlet for them to be able to reach the community.
And what was the name? What was the name of his show?
The Lion's Den. The Lion's Den.
Yes,
he started at WXRA, and of course that continued on to Waffle. And in fact, there's a picture that we all treasure in my family. When my little sister was born, the same day Sammy Davis was on my dad's radio show, and you can see the boxes of cigars that they're celebrating my little baby sister's birth.
Okay.
So my dad was just he was my role model. He was unbelievable. He had a profound impact on the politics, the culture, and the religion of Buffalo. Churches would be able to come on. They had their own hour called the Upper Room, where he would play spiritual music and ministers, and people from the church would come on. And then later that afternoon, he'd be playing rock and roll or rhythm and blues, so it was just so exciting. It was so exciting. And so as a kid,
yes.
For me, as a kid, so going to the radio station, to me was a treat when he would let me come and he would let me push the buttons for the commercials. Back then they had little carts. And so that to me was a big deal. Then he'd let me go back in the back room and edit tapes. And that was just amazing. And the even more, I think, influence on me was that seeing him with all these entertainers made it normal to me. So as a kid, like when entertainers would come to town, I remember indelibly having breakfast with Stevie Wonder. He was 12, I was 12, and I remember his patent leather shoes. And the Supremes came to our house. Because they would all come to town. Dad was the only place that they would, have to talk about the shows. And so my dad would tell me all these stories about James Brown and all these people. So as a child, this influenced me deeply, so that it was normal to be around, personalities and show business. So from a kid, I knew that's what I wanted to do.
Okay, just to let everyone know that's watching on Facebook Live, I'm in an interview right now with Jimi Lyons. He was a legendary Buffalo producer, TV producer in the city of Buffalo back in the day. Also, his father, who he was just talking about, was the very first African-American full-time radio disc jockey in Buffalo's history. And we're reflecting on his memory. He was talking about how the impact that he made. What he talked to us about the significance of that, being the first, knowing that he would open up the door for so many that would come in his footsteps.
Well, I'm sure there's people who remember Frankie Crocker.
Yes.
Yeah, so that he trained under my dad. And Bobby Bird, all these people were like
Gary Bird, yep.
Gary Bird, my apologies, Gary Bird. They were like his mentees.
Yes.
And so, he was just amazing. And then his impact was also in the community, where that there weren't many places to safely go. So he had these record hops every weekend at the Dellwood Ballroom.
Yeah, I've seen pictures of that.
At the Dellwood Ballroom. And so there was an outlet. He provided outlets safe outlets for young people to come, have fun, have a good time, not be out in the streets. And so he did a real service for the community. And there's a lot of people you can talk to today, baby boomers, who can tell you stories about, the Dellwood Ballroom. And so my dad's impact was so broad.
Flash! Project Mercurochrome officials are concerned with a fuel shortage in the space capsule East Aurora. Our gallant astronaut, Colonel Jimi Lyons, is in danger of being French fried if he cannot fire his retro-rockets and flip the capsule over. For our latest details, here's Cape Jefferson and General Shorty O.J. Come in, Cape Jefferson.
There was plenty of fuel. Must have sprung a leak. Let me talk to him. This is General O.J. calling the East Aurora. Come in, East Aurora.
This is Colonel Lyons. Over.
This is General O.J. Under. Tell me, Colonel, what seems to be causing the loss of fuel?
I can't imagine, sir. I didn't drink that much.
Drink? You mean you've been drinking the fuel?
Oh, just a little, sir. It got kind of hot in here.
But you can't drink rocket fuel.
But this is Simon Pure, sir.
You're using Simon Pure beer as fuel?
Yes, sir. I figured it was cheaper, has plenty of thrust, and I can sip a glass or two when I get thirsty.
It's got the thrust, all right. You'll overshoot the drop zone by 100 miles.
Well, I figure more like 250.
But we won't be able to get to you for at least an hour.
Good. That will give me time to finish the rest of the fuel. No sense in wasting any.
Great Scott. Alert the Navy, the Air Corps. You hit Cuba and you'll get a good one. Do you hear me?
Hey, I just discovered what those funny specks are floating around.
You did? Great work. What are they?
Simon Pure beer caps. You know something, sir? Those Russians must have figured out that thrust angle long ago.
This is momentous. You saved the entire space program. Come down, son, and we'll split a case of thrust, Simon Pure.
Here I come.
Sergeant, go over to my quarters and make sure there's plenty of Simon Pure on ice.
Sorry, General. There's no Simon Pure left.
Well, go out and buy me a case.
Sorry, sir, it's all gone.
What do you mean all gone?
Well, sir, Colonel Lyons bought all the salmon pure on the Cape. There's none left.
I'll give him a good one for this. Call me a taxi, a seaplane. I want to be there when that capsule lands.
You're going to give him a medal, General?
I'll give it. Never mind. Get that plane.
And on a more personal level, for our family, he was like a rock, and he was my role model. When I left home, I didn't realize that there was people who didn't have a father like mine. He was very strict with me. He didn't play. He was very nice to my sisters. My sisters and I have conversations like we had two different fathers because he was real kind and gentle to them. But he was real strict with me because he knew as an African-American male, I couldn't be half-stepping. And my nature was to half-step. So he was real strict with me. But I'll never forget, I was about in my 20s, and I had my own TV show in Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. And he came to visit. And I had just done a show with Jack Lemmon, the Academy Award-winning actor. And so we were doing posts at the TV station. And on the way there, he looked at me and he said, "I'm really proud of you." Wow. And that was, to this day, the biggest moment of my life. Because he was always so hard on me. And he was funny. He said, "I'm proud of you."
Yeah, I remember because I was seeing pictures, and we're going to get ready to get into your path in the media as well. Because I've seen pictures that of some of the pictures that you had on Facebook, a lot of the shoots that you would do with O.J. Simpson and a lot of other people. You would have pictures of him like in the background, helping you out behind the scenes or just watching you behind the scenes. How did that feel? I mean, it's almost like the shoe was on the other foot. When you were a child watching him in action on WUFO and on the other radio stations, but now you've come of age and you're getting into the industry, and now he's in the back helping you and cheering for you as well.
Yeah, that was one of the biggest thrills of my life. Like I say, I always knew that I wanted to go into broadcasting. So I went to a college. I went to Temple University, which had one of the best TV schools in the East. And it made a lot of contacts. And then out of school, I was lucky enough to get a job at the ABC station in Philadelphia, WKBW. And so from there, like I said, I was at the right place at the right time. It was after the riots of the 60s, so they were hiring a lot of brothers. So I happened to be at the right place at the right time. So I got to do, I had my own show, and I was able to do a lot of great things. And then the big thrill was I did a show called The Black Superstars. It was a special, and with Willie Mays and Dr. J. And then we did, this is before OJ, of course, got in all of his problems. But then, so I went back to Buffalo to do OJ, and I had my dad run sound.
I saw it.
Yeah, and it was just the biggest thrill because of him that I had an interest to go into television and radio. And so it was just an absolutely profound spiritual moment that both of us were together filming one of our favorite guys, O.J. Simpson, in Buffalo Stadium.
Now, I want to take a sidebar from that because were you around certainly with everything going on now? Were you mentioned the 1967 Buffalo riot? I produced a film on it. You can see I'm wearing the T-shirt of it. Were you around? Do you have any memories of the Buffalo riot?
No, my parents wouldn't let me out the house. I wanted to go down, but my dad wouldn't let me out. But I'll tell you, in parallel to that, I was like, before he passed, my dad had Malcolm X on his radio show, and everybody asked him not to do it. But my dad, he didn't take much from anybody. He was going to do what he wanted to do, and he felt people needed to hear what Malcolm X had to say. And so, but my dad was very, very, very progressive and vociferous. He was a strong African-American man. But no, they didn't let us out the house during the riot. I wanted to go down. They wouldn't let me out.
When I was looking for people to do interviews it was 2 years ago, actually. It was 2018 when I was doing, looking for people to do interviews for the for 67 Buffalo Uprising. I got that from a lot of people, that their memories were kind of short because their parents, they were younger and their parents would not let them out of the house. So I had to look for people look for a demographic that skewed a little bit older. But I want to get back on track here with your interview. Talk about what brought you back to Buffalo.
Actually, what brought me back to Buffalo, my pop passed in 1981. And so my mom was taking care of my baby sister who was very sick. She was having kidney trouble. So I came home to help support my mom. And so it was that reason that I came back to Buffalo in the early 80s. And then I can't remember exactly. It was probably Frank Messiah who, parenthetically, let me back up. My dad got into all these, into radio and everything, not on his own. There was like always the community backing you. People like Frank Messiah and NAACP were always pushing for Black African American representation in the media. So it's important to know that he just wasn't on his own. And the same way, when I came back to Buffalo, people like Frank Messiah helped me get connected. Frank Messiah, and who connected me to John Smith, who connected me. Then I was able to hook up with Channel 7 in Buffalo, and that's how I came back to Buffalo, and that's how I started working in Buffalo.
Okay, and you were working at Channel 7. Were you working at any other stations?
Not in Buffalo at that time, just WKBW, and I was doing other freelance jobs. And it wasn't part-time. I wasn't full-time at WKBW. But I was working with Sarah Norrat on Buffalo Beat. Okay,
so let's talk about Buffalo Beat. That was actually where I had my exposure to television, on the Buffalo Beat show. Talk to our audience about what the Buffalo Beat show was all about.
Yeah, it's similar to what my dad was doing. You know, like even in the 80s, there wasn't a whole lot of platforms that mirrored correctly our communities, people, brown and Black people, our communities, what's going on economically, spiritually. Those kind of issues were usually not dealt in general unless there was a problem. So Buffalo Beat served a really great purpose in that it enabled people from the community to come on and talk about their issues. It was really good. And then I was able to also add, when I joined, that video of, we used to do all kinds of dramatic things, and I would use people from Ujima Theater Company, you know, and little comedy bits and things like that. So, but it was I really have so much appreciation for people like Sarah Norrat and WKBW to really have that sense that we need a place to express our grievances, our happiness, just like is relevant today with what's going on in Minnesota. You know, we always have to have a way to communicate what's good with us and what's bothering us. So Buffalo Beat, tremendous.
And I want to tell you that, and the audience, I was introduced to you back in the summer of 1988, and I can remember sitting in that conference room on the second floor at WKBW TV in the room with you, and I remember being in that room with you and Sarah Norrat and Muhammad Furqan and Patrice Allen and many other people that were part of that show. And I'm the youngest one in the room. I'm 16-year-old kid. And I'm not talking. I'm just sitting here, and but as I was sitting there and sitting in the studio onto the sidelines, I was definitely, and coming with you on shoots, I was definitely soaking up the energy that was going on and soaking up the knowledge that was going on in the room. And after I got out of college and got into the workforce in the 90s, by 1998, I produced a television program called BCTV Tonight when I started working with the Public Access Center. And BCTV Tonight, and I have a clip of it, I have a video of it on the Buffalo History Channel. It stood on the shoulders of Buffalo Beat, because I remembered that show, and that's what I wanted to pattern BCTV Tonight after, because I saw the stuff that we were doing in the community, and at that time the community really didn't have the exposure. The community didn't really have a show that represented the voice of Buffalo's African American community at that particular time, and I wanted to fill that void. Also, to kind of make it a platform for some up and coming young people in the area that might not have been able to get into the TV or radio stations, to kind of get their selves out there. So it was also a training ground and a platform for them as well. Yeah, so I want to say thank you for Buffalo Beat.
But you're just like my dad. That's the spirit of many progressive African American men, where that what you have to do is reach, not I'm going to say reach back, but reach out and bring other people with you. And that's what, what you're doing is so takes so much effort, and
Yes.
it's so much congratulations to you for what you're doing to raise up, our community, which is a constant for 400 years. It's a constant fight to raise up.
Now, I was going to say, do you have any memories of work? Because I know you worked closely not just with Channel 7, but also with the Public Access Center and Sonship Communications at that time. Do you have any memories of working with Sonship Communications?
Yeah, it was like a harbor in the storm. That was such a great place to be. And Clarence Smith, who ran it at the time, actually, I knew him from Lincoln Memorial Church. So when I came back to Buffalo, they said, well, who's running? I said, well, who's running? And they said, Clarence Smith. I said, oh, excellent. So yeah, it was a great place where you can go, you can be creative, and then you have your work put on TV on the Public Access Channel. And it was a fantastic place because I came from Philadelphia. I was very fortunate to be very creative, and you can't be that in many places,
Right.
And coming here and having an outlet with Clarence and Sonship was just really, really, like I say, a harbor in the storm, a great refuge for creative filmmakers.
And in addition, in addition to starting with Buffalo Beat, I also got my exposure with Public Access and Sonship Communications and Clarence Smith as well. So shout out to Clarence Smith. So what projects are you working on? What have you been in? When did you leave Buffalo, first of all?
Well, the first time I left in '68. The second time I left, after I came back after my pop died, my mom had passed and my baby sister had passed in '90. So I left Buffalo in '90 after my mom and my sister had passed and went back to Philly and worked in news there, which I hated because I was used to being a creative person.
I worked in news back in 2009. I didn't like that too much either.
It's not a picnic. It's not, you got to do what you got to do when you got to do it.
Yeah.
But then I was able to get a grant to do a film called Rhythm Thing, a real tribute to the African American Continuum of Excellence. And I had the great pleasure of working with Oscar Brown Jr.
Wow.
Who I had met when I was performing with Ujima 2 years earlier. I was with because Ujima had put together a tribute to Oscar Brown Jr. and I met him then. Then when I got the grant in DC to do Rhythm Thing, I reconnected with Oscar, and so he and I wrote and he narrated Rhythm Thing, which was to this day one of my best pieces of work. I really enjoyed it.
Okay. So anything you got going on presently? I know you're doing a project dedicated to your father's memory. Can you also talk about that?
Yeah, in fact, everything I'm doing now is going into this in memory of my dad and honor him. I've created Lyons Studios, which is a video production studio, which we create videos to entertain, educate, and inspire. And we're going to leap off in July 1st, which would be my parents' 76th anniversary of them being married. That's their marriage anniversary. And so I'm putting together a whole package that we're going to be looking to people in Los Angeles and other places to purchase. But yeah, so everything I'm doing right now is to really get Lyons Den Studio off the ground and running. And like I say, from my father, because you mentioned something very important. A lot of people don't know my dad, don't know of him. And it's sad. It's like not knowing who George Washington was, or not knowing,
exactly,
the people who built, who built entertainment in Buffalo. And so for the rest of my living days, everything's going to be a tribute to my dad. It's called Lyons Den Studio. We'll have the website up and running in a month. And we got some videos already in our catalog, and we're producing some more now. And and the first big one, of course, is about my dad. His story. That's what I'm doing.
And I wanted to piggyback on that, because when I started working at WUFO back in 2007, they were in the process of putting together their 45th anniversary. And I took it upon myself to go and do some research who all the DJs were from the past. And I remember I came across a lot of people: Frankie Crocker, Eddie O.J., the list goes on and on. And your father and the Lyons Den came up. However, I didn't know that he, at the time, that he was the first. That wasn't until I would connect with you on Facebook, maybe a couple years after that or so. And so I'm as remiss as I was about that, I definitely wanted to make that right by definitely reaching out to you and doing this interview and helping to get this story of your father out here to the public, because it's something that a story that needs to be told. And as I said at the top of the interview, it's a name everyone in Buffalo radio needs to know.
Yeah, and my sister Gail did a great interview with the Challenger newspaper about my dad, which is we're all really we get kind of, I don't want to say mad, but we get inspired to really remind people or let people know who my father was.
Right.
It's really, he should not be forgotten.
No, he shouldn't.
He should not be forgotten.
Okay, and I remember I know you. I know many of your family members in the city of Buffalo. I know Gail, of course, and Kunjani. Yeah. And I had a chance to meet. I didn't meet Patricia, but I met Tiffany. They both went to Build Academy. We're all Build Academy alumni. Yes. And I met Tiffany, and Tiffany had me come because she was doing a video project on her father, grandfather, Norman Lyons Sr. And I had a chance to meet him. So I have met. He was a wonderful, wonderful man. God rest his soul. And we did do an interview with him. I'm sure she still has the video. But he was a wonderful, wonderful man.
Yeah, he was like something out of a movie. He was one of those solid, truthful, honest, upstanding. He was like a character out of a movie. He was just unbelievable. Now, my dad, his brother, he was more like on the wild side. They were good contracts. In fact, they worked together. They for a while they had a construction company together. My dad, Norman, yeah.
Okay. Was there anything else you'd like to say for the interview?
No, just that I really hope that people, learn more about my father. We're trying to put more and more information on the internet. We're trying to put more and more information out so people can really see who he was. Because he's such an inspiration to me. He was just undefeatable. He went through a lot of hard times, but he never gave up, no matter what he had to do, whether it was sell vacuum cleaners or, he once had a roller skating rink in Lackawanna. He would do whatever it took to take care of his family. And so my father, he went through a lot of vicissitudes, but he never, ever stopped. And that had a deep impact on me. And I really hope that for young people today, especially in these hard times with the pandemic and all that's going on in America, just remember that we've gone through things like this before, and we've always won. We always come out. We never, ever, ever give up. And that's what I got from my dad and his generation is that never give up.
Absolutely. Well, Jimmy, it's been a pleasure and an honor to have you on the Buffalo History Channel. Been trying to get you on for a while, and I'm definitely hoping to hook up with you later on in the near future.
Yes, we definitely will. And thank you so much for all the great work you're doing to preserve the history of our people and our country. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And for everyone that's watching here and on Facebook Live as well, I'm doing a Zoom interview with Jimmy. So you're going to see the full Zoom interview that's going to be posted later on Facebook as well as the Buffalo History Channel. And Jimmy's going to be sending me some pictures and video, I think even footage from Buffalo Beat. So we'll definitely have a chance to reflect back on what the Buffalo Beat show was. From time to time, I post about the Buffalo Beat show. So I'm looking forward to seeing some of that. All right, Jimmy, it's been good to have you, man.
Hey, thank you. It's been an honor. Thank you so much.
All right, brother.
We'd like to share with you why we created Lyons Den Studios. It all started with my parents. My parents were my inspiration. My mother, Ruth Frank Lyons, was trained as an educator. And my father, Jimi Lyons, was an entertainer and a pioneer broadcaster. Together, they created a loving family environment that gave my sisters and I the confidence to achieve in anything. My mother was the most loving and supportive person I've ever known. Her unconditional love created the foundation for my life. Mom's supportive and nurturing spirit, plus her strength, were the glue that held our family together. She taught us not only to care for each other as family members, but also to think about the rest of the world. That's the way she was raised. Mom was born on a small farm in North Carolina. She had a keen intellect and was driven by a passion to learn and to help others. So she became an elementary school teacher and gave other young people the skills to succeed. During World War II, she moved to Washington, D.C., and her life was changed forever, because it was there that she met my dad, and not long after, they were married. Now my dad, he was something. He gave me his fire and his undefeatable spirit. He was my role model. I modeled my life after him. His father was from Georgia and his mother was from New Jersey. And they gave him the foundation that led him to become Buffalo, New York's first full-time African-American disc jockey. In the 1950s and early 60s, he changed the cultural landscape of Buffalo. With guests like Sammy Davis Jr., he brought big-time African-American show business to the Queen City. And it impressed me so much, I went into broadcasting myself. Inspired by him, I worked with people like James Earl Jones and Paul Newman. I was proud to follow in his footsteps. So my mom, the educator, and my dad, the entertainer, inspired me to create a video studio that produces exciting and entertaining shows that educate and inform. We hope you'll like them. Thanks for watching. See you soon. Bye-bye.